Welcome to this new series on the masks of Commedia dell'arte historical background. Today we're going to look at Arlecchino. Arlecchino is a servant of Commedia dell'arte and therefore a Zanni. Like all the other Zanni, meaning the generic term for the servants of Commedia dell'arte, he belongs to the lowest classes, which back then in the 1500s and 1600s Renaissance Italy means peasants. So people that work the land. Specifically, Arlecchino comes from the region around the area around Bergamo. And like the other Zanni, he moved to the big city, to Venice, tried to find a way to survive. In this case, from the Po Valley to Venice, but if we refer to the south, the big center might have been Naples, for instance. What are the major characteristics of this Arlecchino? The major features are the same of any other Zanni. So is driven by the major driving force for Arlecchino is food, is to feed himself and eventually his family, like all the other Zanni. So again, is the survival. And the features as second Zanni are similar to the Zanni that we looked at last time. So there's an element of naivety, there is an element of clumsiness, is an extremely charming character, but Arlecchino, obviously with different degrees according to what is the scenario and what the actor performs Arlecchino. Arlecchino has a more mischievous quality. So I would say, yes, there is still that element of a certain element of naivety and this idea of being easily distracted. Yeah, could be distracted. Oh, there is something to eat over there, but there is also maybe Colombina over there. And so his attention span can be quite short, and he can be easily distracted by the something new that comes in his radar and attention. And there's that sort of toddler-like quality in terms of like being easily excitable and easily distracted. That's okay. We are all in common, also with the Zanni, as we saw in the previous sessions. But for Arlecchino, there's also this element of mischievousness and playfulness, and physically it's much more agile and fast. There's an element of a cat almost in the Arlecchino. So there are some differences that obviously came about by the qualities of the actors that developed this mask. Like any other mask, it's the actors of Commedia dell'arte, the actors of the time that brought to life, that gave life to these masks and gave them specific quality related to the specific stylistic choices and taste. When we talk about anger as a driving force, with Arlecchino we have something else as well. Often in the scenarios there is a romantic through line for the Arlecchino. He's often in love with the female servant, Colombina or Smeraldina, depends the name of the specific servant in the scenario. So there's also something else. There's a driving force, which is the basic, like the food, needs to feed himself, but also love. And that's why physically we have with Arlecchino, yes, the belly exposed, but also his heart, in the physicality of the Arlecchino. Some masks became particularly popular thanks to the actors that developed them. The actors that developed them became famous, or was particularly in demand, and that became the heritage of Commedia dell'arte. And that's why we know about this specific mask that came until today. Arlecchino is one of them, is one of the most famous masks of Commedia dell'arte. First actor who performed Arlecchino, who developed Arlecchino, is called Tristan Martinelli, and then there have been other great performers, especially in the next century, performers that brought it to France. And so we believe the mask might have been influenced by the taste of the French court at that time. And what we see, at least in the information that we have now, and the drawing that we find of Arlecchino, that there's something quite balletic about the way he moves. There's something quite dance-like. Often we have depiction of Arlecchino, for instance, and also acrobatic quality of him standing upside down on his hand, of his head, and this very performative acrobatics and balletic qualities. This is probably something that happened throughout the centuries, an integration of the demand and the tastes of the audiences that they encounter. Going back to the origins of the mask, yes, he's a peasant from Bergamo. Yes, he wants to survive and then he moves to the city. But there's something quite interesting about the name, Arlecchino. possibly something quite close to the root of Alicants. Alicants were the name of some little devils. And there are a lot of folk stories back in the Middle Age, the 12th century, stories about these Alicants, this army of little devils that are running in the underworld. It's a bit, and it's very likely that Tristano Martinelli knew about this story, this tradition. And perhaps the choice of calling his character Arlecchino perhaps betrayed that, who knows? But if this is true, then there is almost then this kind of sort of fascinating diabolical quality potential about this character. Still a lovable character, not the devil, it's kind of that dark feature of the devil, but something that would explain his mischievousness, his cheekiness in a certain sense. So this Alicant, this devil. Some might see that in the physicality. For instance, his rotation of the pelvis, there's exposure to the tailbone. It might be that this the tail, not only the tail of the cat, but the tail of this little devil might have been cat as he moved from the underworld up to the world of the living being. And also, as you can see in the mask of the Arlecchino, there is a little dot often. That might have been a horn. Who knows if this Alicant that has been cut from when again he became a human. Now, this is a very romantic view of Arlecchino, which we can embrace, and it could be very, very interesting and beautiful in the performance of Arlecchino. However, the dot, red dot on his forehead that we find often, the dot is also, this bump is also in Pulcinella mask and potentially in other Zanni as well. Maybe there's a less romantic explanation and a more basic and realistic due to the condition of these poor servants of Commedia dell'arte inspired by the poor peasants of that time. That might simply be skin disease that probably were quite common considering the hygienic and nutritional, or actually lack of nutrition, that these people were living under. I just want to make a note about the mask of the Arlecchino. As you can see, very different from the Zanni that we saw in the previous session. He has a short nose, and the features can be either very cat-like, rounded and soft, or maybe a bit more like monkey-like, so like strong features. This is, you can see some examples of a mask. It's actually called Monkey Arlecchino by a mask maker called Antonio Fava. So again, you can go with really different range and possibility, like for any mask. So on one hand, just a reminder that these are the information and the heritage we got of this mask comes from what the actors did in the 15th and 1600s and came to us from partly written documentation, depiction, the drawing and that you saw in this presentation. And there's also the different range of masks or leather masks for each character, and that is for the artistic input that the mask maker obviously makes. So a lot of elements, and an invitation is to take these masks, these characters of Commedia dell'arte, and make them your own, meaning learn about them, about their physicality, their voice, their history, and then work with them, because after all, the actor brings to life the character. You have the mask, you have that as a template to work with, and in that you find a way to express yourself, because obviously the actors back then didn't have manual of Commedia dell'arte. They created those characters. The actors are the engine and the essence that brought to life these characters. And the same is what should happen today. We work with all this information. We work obviously with the specific hierarchy within the scenarios, where the servants will be at the bottom of the pecking order, but because it's a comedy that turns things upside down grotesquely, at the end the servant will triumph, like the younger generation. Within that structure, which is an accepted structure of how the scenarios of Commedia and the power dynamic between characters work, within that we have the freedom as actors to work with that and to create our own Commedia dell'arte. The next session will look at Brighella.